Welcome to the 1334 podcast, where passion meets purpose in the nonprofit world. I'm your host, Blake Barlow, and today I'm joined with Enoch Kenway. We will be visiting him very shortly here in Thailand. And today I just wanted to give a quick introduction of who he is and let you guys meet him really quick. Enoch, can you give a little introduction to who you are and how you guys got started in Thailand?
Awesome. Well, yeah, it's so good to be on with you guys and all the followers, and really excited, firstly, to have you guys over and just really share about what God's done, what God's doing, and what He's about to do as well. Just a little bit about myself. You might be able to tell by my accent. I'm an Australian, and really born in the country in Australia, in a small town called Loxton, about 7,000 people. And I've got a great heritage. My parents pretty much been pastoring their whole life in small communities and involved in pioneering works. And really my whole life's been part of ministry. And I haven't known much different. But the truth is I haven't always been surrendered to Jesus. And so even though I had a great upbringing, it wasn't until I was 17 that I really committed my life and really poured in, gave my life to Him and moved forward. And so about 9 years ago, I was serving in my local church in Australia, and been involved in ministry for probably in a full-time capacity for at least 7 years before that. And so been involved in ministry for 15, 16 years full-time, and it's really been a journey to that place, because I don't really love to use the word ministry, because I think that our lives are full-time ministry, in our workplaces, our families. But in the sense that I was paid by a Christian organization or a church to do what I'm doing. And about 9 years ago, I really felt God stirring our family to church planting, and I've got a real deep desire for the local church. I truly believe it's the hope of the world. It's Jesus is coming back for His bride, His church, the people, and I just see such a long-term aspect of discipleship and community transformation that happens through a local church. Often ministries can pop up and close and things like this, but the church, when it's established and it's set up healthily, the pastor can even leave and the church will remain. It continues on for generations, and so we really felt like that God was actually we didn't feel like God was leading us to this certain location, but there was an aspect where there was a real need in a city in Australia that didn't have a great expression of a church. And so we're about 1 year into that journey of, well, Lord, are you leading us to be part of that? And I had this honest conversation with my pastor and said, I just really need to talk to you about something, because we're already kind of started to navigate that conversation. And during that conversation, I said, I feel like I can, be part of this church plant and help lead that, but I don't have a passion necessary for the people in that city, or it would be more of an obligation. And I really honor my pastor for this, because he said to me, well, where do you feel God's leading you? And I said, I feel like God's leading us to Asia. And in context, I'm not from a big city like Melbourne or Sydney. My worldview is fairly small, it's locally. And so Asia is, on the map, it's like, from Japan all the way over to, Eastern Europe. So it wasn't specific about what we were doing. And so he said, hey, why don't you take a team to Japan? We're looking and serving a work that was really establishing amazing churches in that nation. And I think they've got about 15 churches and 3,000 to 5,000 people that are in their congregations in Japan. And so I went there and really felt like that Lord really confirmed that this is what we were part of, is moving to Asia and seeing church planting. And about 5 trips in, my pastor had an honest conversation with me, as every good leader should, and said, hey, what are you doing? You know, you coming and going, coming and going. What's God stirring? And I said to him on the last trip, actually, I was caretaking our home church, and he was actually in the States on a bit of a sabbatical and things. And so I didn't feel like I wanted to talk to him over the phone about our last trip as a family to Japan. But during that time, God really put in my heart that that wasn't Japan, and that God was really going to be releasing me as a spiritual father, to raise up spiritual sons in this next season. But I didn't have a location or a country, and so I came back to Australia saying, until I know that country, we're just going to be committed to the vision locally. And then as I shared what God had been putting on my wife is Summer, on her heart as well, there was an elder at the table, and she actually said, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know, Enoch and Summer, God really pressed on my heart 3 years ago about you guys moving to Thailand, but I felt like it wasn't the right time to share with you guys, but I felt like there was peace about sharing it right now."
That's wild.
And to be honest, I didn't necessarily jump out of my seat and jump in the air. It was actually quite measured, and we're like, "Oh, that's great." We kind of nearly sort of brushed it off in one way, and did the Christian thing and said we'd pray about it. And so there was peace at the table in the sense that God was leading us somewhere, but we were actually at peace to stay in Australia until we knew where that was. And pretty much every day after every kitchen conversation, I got home from work, my wife and I was like, "What are you feeling?" And there was just this excitement in the air, and it was like something was brewing in our hearts. And so that was really the catalyst of how Thailand, the nation, came about. We were involved a little bit as a church, serving some missions things. And so, yeah, that was kind of how we arrived in Thailand. And it took about 9 months from that conversation for me to transition out of my roles in Australia and responsibilities, and raising some support, and I guess preparing our family for that. And so, we're blessed with 3 amazing children. So my oldest is Levi. He is 14. Then my next son is Asher, 13. Both incredible young people that, they're quiet achievers. They love all the tech and things. So they were my first sound man and lighting people in our church plant as 7, 8-year-olds, and just they have a real love and heart for the house of Jesus Christ. And then I've got my daughter. She is currently 11, coming on 12, and she's our outgoing personality. She's everyone's best friend. She's not very shy, and her language skills, are the best in our family. So she can pretty much is fluent in Thai language as well as English. Reads, writes it, speaks it,
Wow.
Talks back to me in it, and so it's really great. So that's a little bit about sort of how we started. And I just felt, Blake, to share that because we're not a mega church sort of couple that came out and we got slingshotted and someone paid for us to do this. We just, I guess, felt like we're just country people that just served him faithfully where we were, in our local congregation. And then through that and the obedience of God, we just continue to make those small steps. And so that's kind of how we originally arrived in Thailand 8 years ago. So that's a little short bit, but I thought with everyone listening today, and I want to really, I guess, over this next, a few months, to share my heart with the people and the listeners about God can use the insignificant the small things. And, I pray that our story is a story of God can use anyone, because we just feel very, very normal. But I would say that there is a place where God's put a real faithfulness in our hearts, and just being diligent in the small things. And then as he entrusts you with that, he'll give you much, and that's really been our story. Is that we arrived in Chiang Rai, Thailand, and so just a little bit about Chiang Rai. Chiang Rai is sort of the northern city of Thailand. It's on the border of Myanmar and Laos. It's, I guess, called the Golden Triangle because back in the 60s to 80s, there was a lot of drug trade through that area. And so there's a lot of sort of rehabilitation aspect that's still happening within that area of the decades before. It's primarily all cleaned up, that side of things. And so there's just this hustle and bustle of cultures and tribes. There's over 15 significant tribal groups all throughout the mountains that Chiang Rai services and contributes to. And so there's a mixed languages. There's but still to the roots, it's quite local. It's a regional city. And so God called us into that city. And, I remember leaving Australia and you wish everyone was positive when you're sort of stepping out to something. But, we did have some people like, who do you think you are? You're a white Australian wanting to go plant a church. And there was a negative tone that I really had to be disciplined about.
Yeah.
Actually, part of me doesn't like that aspect, but I'm just being obedient. And so we arrived in that city with a 4-year-old, 6-year-old, and a 7-year-old. Never planted a church in our life. I've been pastoring in Australia. Don't speak the Thai language. The first day I was trying to work out where to buy milk from. And so no cross-cultural context. I didn't do, I broke all the rules, didn't do any cross-cultural training, just went with the call of God. And I think we had 5 suitcases of our own. Our whole life was in 5 suitcases. I had about 5 suitcases worth of secondhand church equipment, old microphone leads and microphones and a guitar on my back. And I arrived in the city going, all right, Lord, let's do this. And didn't have a house or anything like that. And so, it was really humble beginnings. The first 2 months, our church looked like 2 people in my lounge room. That was our church. And most of the time, in those first few times, my family wasn't involved because it was young kids. And so summer, my wife was looking after the kids. And I remember having a prayer and worship night, and I was praying, I was believing the Lord. We invited these people to come, and no one showed up. It was just myself. And so, there's very humble beginnings in sometimes the pioneering, but you got to be faithful. And so, during those first couple of years, it really stretched us in the faith and the calling of God, because I'm sure a lot of the listeners that are listening today have felt God leading you to something, but you haven't got that breakthrough yet. And you start to doubt, is it God or was it my own idea? Or I try to not do anything with ambitious intent, or motives, but, wanting to do what God had led us to. And so 2 years in, we had a real, I thought we were in revival. We had 40 people in the church, and so that was sort of that's right. That's 200% or whatever it might be. Over the years. So, and then really the second year, I'm not sure if I should actually shared this with you, but at the end of that year, like most churches, we might do like a thank you evening or something like that to your volunteers. Well, our church was small enough where by this stage, it wasn't for volunteers, it was for the whole church. We're just having a thank you party, thanking God for what he had done that year, but also casting some vision for the year to come and that sort of thing. And I'm probably known as a pretty soft pastor in a sense that I want to try to keep people happy, and I'm not sort of super direct at times. I've learned to be a lot more direct and bring sort of good leadership in that aspect. But I felt like the Lord really spoke to me about what to speak about at this thank you party. And I felt like there was people in our church that were there that were serving out of obligation and didn't know how to kind of leave, or they weren't trying to offend an entire culture. It's really important to save face, particularly even amongst religious leaders, in the sense of spiritual influences. And I felt like the Lord said, give them like an open door, that if they wanted to be part of something different. Now, I can tell you that it's not really the normal thing for a pastor in a group like this to sort of give an open door and say, hey, if anyone feels like this is not what you're part of and where we're going, we just want to make sure that you find, a great local church. Particularly, this is not the conversation that you have when you're pioneering, because you want to take anyone that moves. If they got a dog, bring them in, and it's just, you just need anyone to sort of build that momentum. And but I really felt like the Lord spoke to me about this, and I went into this evening peaceful, knowing that God spoke to me about this, but also my flesh was nervous because it's not the playbook as such. And the next week, I kid you not, half our church wasn't there on the Sunday. Like
Really?
we half the church had gone, and but there was just such a peace in the church, and every week from January all the way to April, our church had new students, new families, and they stayed. And by the end of April, our church was sort of 70 to 80 people.
Wow.
And now we feel like we're in revival from sort of a 20. And I think something in the spirit shifted, and I felt like God honored what his spirit was pressing on our hearts about having unity, having, a real direct focus. And so those next 3 to 4 years, our church pretty much just continued to double. And during that period, one of the fastest growing churches in Thailand. And the average church in Thailand is 35 people. And so for us, have a church of 200 to 300 was quite significant in a small period of time. And so, that was, it feels like it happened fast, but to be honest, there was just the daily grind of waking up, team meetings and discipleship and life groups and outreaches and soccer connects. It was like, there was actually just a bit of a normality to just being faithful. But you can kind of look back and go, wow, there is just significant growth in people. And so, during our time and leading the church and pioneering and establishing that, it's registered with the Thai government, which is quite a difficult thing to do in Thailand. And so we have a fully registered church. And we've seen hundreds of people, Buddhist people, come to Christ and water baptized. And so that was our season in Chiang Rai. And so then after that season, we actually felt the Lord give us a release that that this was his church, and what we had established would remain. And we had poured really a significant season full-time in that whole period of nearly 7 years. Our family only went back to Australia once for 3 weeks. And so my daughter couldn't remember Australia. Her only memory of Australia was 3 weeks on holidays. Her memory is that everyone has swimming pools in Australia, because everywhere we went, someone had a swimming pool, but it was just that we're on holidays in summer. And so we felt like bringing our family back to their roots and for them to understand their home country, and knew and had the peace from God that what we had, pioneered and established would continue to grow with the leadership structures and the local team. And so, that was that season. And over the next months ahead, we're going to be sharing more details and stories about significant changes in people's lives and what has happened there. And so then last year came back to Australia and was involved with our movements, national movements, missions organisation, and I was invited to be the missions manager, overseeing, I think, 130 missionaries and involved with their projects, and had a team that was in that. So, was being able to support, I guess, the global mission of going to the nations, but just more from a management level. And then, that's where God really pressed on our heart that Thailand was our home, and it's time for us to close the chapter in Australia. And so in the middle of last year, we started to prepare a house and for sale, and we sold our house only sort of 3 weeks ago, a week before we arrived back here in Thailand. And this is our life, to pour into to the amazing church leaders and pastors here, and to see the local church truly established in this nation. And so, that's a little bit about us. And so, we'll share more. But love to sort of take you guys on a journey about our family, about what God's doing, and what He's done. Because I think testimonies are powerful, because testimonies, you can look back and give glory to God for what He has done, and He is faithful. But also it puts faith in our hearts and in our spirit for what's to come.
Mm-hmm.
He's done it before, He can do it again. And so that's really our next season, is really seeing a multiplication effect of church planting and the local church established in a great way in this nation.
So you're helping, man, I have a lot to dig in. I have questions from the beginning, but also
Sure.
I want to go into a little bit about what you're doing now. Let's go back first. Do you think being born and raised in such a small city helped create a little bit of a toughness to you that you could stick to the grind whenever you got in Thailand? Do you think that had any play in being able to grind day after day after day to build something?
Totally. I think it's got a lot to do my humble beginnings of living in the country, but also I did mention that my father was pastoring a local church, and back in the 80s and in the early 90s, it was very modest salary, and so most Saturdays my dad would be fruit picking oranges, and I remember my sister and I used to pick beans on Saturdays and in school holidays, and we'd have these buckets, and so there's this place where we never, I guess, we're just gifted stuff, that there was this hustle of, hey, we got to make to live out the call of God. We also need to be quite faithful and have a strong work ethic, and my parents have really put that into me. Probably some of the hardest working people I know, and still are, and so I just think that probably from the country, but also my parents have really instilled a strong work ethic, a faithfulness, don't give up, so I think a combination of the country and the humble beginnings, but also my parents, have really modeled that.
Do you think so? What was Japan and Thailand? I'm sure there was a culture shock, but was it also crazy seeing so many people in one place at one time?
Yeah, I think that's where my world really opened up, and put this passion and necessarily, like, I guess, an eagerness and an urgency to go. There are literally millions of people that are walking through life far from God.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess from my Christian worldview of a pastor's kid, as such, and sort of, in the country, to go, there's more people in this city that I'm ministering into than there was within, like, whatever, a 500-kilometer radius of where it was. So I just think that the world is so much bigger. You got, like, I encourage all the listeners, you got to travel, go visit a project. Go when you're on holidays, maybe take 2 days off to go visit something or a ministry work that someone's doing, and just to feel the sense of real life, what's happening behind the scenes outside of the nice hotel you're staying at. And that's fine. I love going on holidays and staying in hotels and at the beach and all those sorts of things. But behind that, the local aspect of behind the facade of maybe the tourism aspect, there's real people far from God. And so that really put an urgency in our hearts of going, man, we needed to get this gospel presented in a way that people can resonate with, that people can grow in their identity and who God is. And so I laugh at the moment because my daughter and I, we can speak Thai, and so we chat a little bit. And she came when we came back on just only 2 weeks ago. She said, "Dad, it feels like home." And we're eating, and he's like, "Dad, to be honest, you and I are an Asian, Dad," and because we love to involve in culture. And I think, when God places you somewhere, I think it's important, once you know it's from God, is to embrace it. And so we've just like, this is home, this is life. Most evenings, in the busyness and different things, I'm out eating noodle cuts on the side of the streets and just part of the community. And so, yeah, I love it. I love the hustle and bustle of Asia. I'm not a morning person, so shopping centers don't open until 11 a.m. here. And so, but they close at 9 or 10 p.m. every night. So that's kind of my life.
So it reminds me, I was reading through some books when I first started working with nonprofits, and then kind of started to take over a CEO more say role, and then, started 1334. I was reading books that talked about how to be a good business owner, you have to be in the community. You have to be, one key point that he said that I'll never forget is he said, you have to eat lunch out every day. It's the same places and meet people and know them by name if you want to impact a community and sell who you are. And saying what you just did, it reminded me of that. Like, being in the community is such a massive thing for business owners, but I'm sure it is for, not just pastors, but missionaries too. I didn't even consider. So when I went to India, Andy, he's 6'4", he was a big dude, and his wife was a little small Indian lady, and all Indians are my height. They're all like 5'5", 5'4", shorter. So he stood out literally like by a foot. And we were in a part of India that they didn't really like large white guys. They didn't like Christians. Didn't like Christians at all. So it was more of when he was there, he was taking care of the boys in the orphanage, but he wasn't out in the community very much. But it seems like you're the complete opposite. Like, you're out in the community every day. What is that like? And is that how you were able to grow your church?
Yeah, I think like one of the gifts I do feel God's given me is I'm very relational, and so I try to do things with relational intent. And so it's funny that you mentioned the restaurant. I would intentionally go to certain restaurants all the time. I just visited 2 days after arriving in Thailand on this trip. Our kids wanted to visit a couple of their best friends, and so we wanted to do that. And so it was just staying at a hotel, there for 2 nights. And first thing we did was, kids were settled, and Summer and I, we jumped in the car. We went to our favorite noodle shop. It's on the highway. It's busy. It's dirty. There's often, a rat that would run out somewhere, and it's just very, just a humble, typical sort of Asian type of noodle shop. And you should see their faces. They're like, because I can understand Thai, and they're talking and we're talking, and they're like, "Where have you been?" Because I did let them know that we'll be leaving the city, and they were just like, "We've missed you," and all this sort of stuff. Now, I haven't once yet shared a gospel directly to them, but there was this place of like, I was part of their community. They embraced me, and so we were very intentional. Like, it's funny. I don't love to use the word outreach when I'm in Thailand, only because it has a certain stigma about it. It's like you're trying to produce results, and the people can feel that you're there because you're trying to do something. I've probably because of my relational leadership style, is I call it intentional community connection. And so if we have intention in why we're there and what we're doing, that's great. But I'm not going to necessarily bus in an outreach group and call it, "Hey, we've got an outreach team coming to your village." I will more present it in a way as like, "Hey, we've got some time. We've got some people visiting. We'd love to sort of just connect and hear your heart. And if there's some community leaders that would love to spend some time, and actually, I'd love to have a lunch with you guys and hear how we could help and serve you." That has a different resonate, is like from presentation of, I'm trying to actually be here to help and serve you and come alongside you, rather than an in and out approach of like, I've come into this village, shared the gospel, and then off we go, and hopefully something happens afterwards. We kind of were very intent. So all our intentional in community engagements, in brackets outreaches, were very intentional, purposeful, and we kept going back to that same place. And so we didn't just go everywhere and anywhere. We tried to really build relationships with the local leaders. And so that was really our intent. Intent in round university engagement was the same thing. I just went in there as a person that wants to have fun and make some new friends. And so our language was, "Hey, let's make some new friends this week." That was a culture of coming from our church community and our team is, "Hey, this week, make some new friends." Rather than, "Hey guys, why don't you reach out to your community and your people and have an outreach?" It was just very like, let's just can we start with making friends and get into their heart? And through that, we have the opportunity to really share the gospel that will be a seed that gets sown into their heart. So, probably just a little bit different style than some other things that have been in the past.
It sounds a lot like the way Jesus did it, though.
I think, like, I do think that I don't know, like I think it's my personality coming through in the way that ministry flowed, and I think it has resonated particularly with the Thai community. And I think the young people these days all around the world, they just want integrity. They see through all the politics. They see through the hidden agendas. They just want, why, if you're here to help and that's your agenda, well, they're open. But sometimes, if you're here because you're trying to do something for your own gain, and even in a kingdom sense, sometimes we do want to see the kingdom grown, and there is this underlying eternal aspect with what we're wanting to be involved with. But the truth is, particularly with Thai people, they'll say yes and nod their head to everything, but to truly transform their heart and get within, it's got to happen relational. It's got to happen around the table. I would say that 80 to 90% of all our salvations or Buddhists coming to Christ or lives being transformed didn't happen on a Sunday service. It happened in small groups. It happened on the soccer field. It happened eating noodles. It happened. That's where true life happened. Sunday was amazing because we bring that all together and we celebrate and we can communicate some things that are a bit more corporate. But we actually built a culture where there was lives being transformed throughout the week, and Sunday was just a gathering together, and obviously teaching and worship and all the normal things that sort of happen in the life of the church, but it happens when their hearts are open to share with them. So there's a lot of eating. I have to stay fit, so that's why I like sport as well. If I just ate, I'd be So I think for me, I just think that is Jesus's heart. He came for our hearts. He didn't came for our behavior to be changed straight away. He came for our hearts. He came for that surrendered spirit. And so for me, I'm always praying, Lord, how do I get into their heart? Or we all have those hard people in our lives. You're like, man, they're hard. In Australia, we'll say they're a hard egg to crack. You just can't get inside. They've got their walls up. And I just feel like just spending time and just slowing it down a little bit. And then often, some of the most amazing, I would say, hearts that have been open has been sitting on a motorbike. And I'll probably share more about this in some things when you guys come over. Of sitting on a motorbike after soccer, and it's 10 o'clock at night. All the fields have been turned off, lights are off, the community's starting to quieten down, and just having some really deep, meaningful conversations about people struggling with how Jesus could accept them because they've got tattoos and they've got this and they've got a Buddhist background and they've worshipped another God. And for me, just to sit on the side of the bike, listening to their stories and then being able to let them know of who Jesus is and the grace and the mercy and how he's come in. And so for me, that's life's being transformed and families restored are often in these quiet moments off the stage. That's my heart as a local pastor and missionary is actually to sort of help to cultivate cultures like this, to see prevailing strong churches thriving in this nation. I just read a report recently, and I thought it was a lot more, but it's still less than 1% Christian in Thailand, in a country that's about 73 million people. And so, the gospel's been here for 150 years, yet it hasn't broken through into society in a big way. And so that's really our heart, is to see that number change and to see local churches and young pastors taking up the mission to see their villages, communities and cities transformed.
That perfectly ties in exactly what you just did, because you weren't necessarily doing an outreach. You were just inviting friends and people to the theater. So can you talk a little bit about what you just did last night?
Pretty amazing. And I don't want to take all the credit for me personally, because I've only been here back into Thailand a couple of weeks, but the team here who had the heart to. What's that?
Whose idea was it? It's such a cool idea.
Yeah, I think it started with someone actually wanting to financially help with sort of connecting with locals, and there was a group and a local pastor here, and sort of said, well, what about a cinema? And I guess something like this can be quite expensive, particularly for a Thai economy. But knowing that we had some financial support from a generous business person that wanted to get behind this really helped to make this happen. And the heart behind it was really to create a place where they might not come to a church building or a church service, but you invite them to the theatre, and it's like we provided free popcorn and soft drink, and it was a pretty easy way to connect. So I guess sometimes as leaders, we are just trying to be very intentional about how can we make it easy for our people to connect to people. And so we try to take down any barriers. And this was like just one idea of also the way that Pastor Sean, our local leader here, and I think we probably don't just think traditionally about what the traditional church has done in the past. And so this was an Easter weekend. How can we, I guess, bring a creative, contemporary expression of what we could do to reach into the hearts of the people? And so I think for the style of church and a generation that we're trying to witness into, I think the theatre was a really great way. And so we had 318 tickets completely given out, and was full. There was probably close to 40 to 50 people on the aisle sitting in the aisles. I was sitting in the aisle of walkways, and there was just such an atmosphere. And our worship team here actually wrote a song, and so we had a music video, and so there was just a few small things where we actually launched in a creative way, which maybe, in Australia or in America, it's a little more normal to be quite creative in the expression of church. But here locally, it's not like that kind of very traditional religious approach to things. And they love Jesus, the local pastors here. But for us to see something different, and so we were completely really blown away. This church is only 2.5 years old. And, I know that wasn't necessarily our Sunday congregation, but, we would have had 30 or 40 responses last night. And it just put faith in the spirit of our community of getting out there, and incredible. So we actually showed an episode of The Chosen as part of the sermon content. And so we had some worship at the start, launched our EP, or our church's first written song that was produced, and a music video. So there's a bit of excitement about that. And then we used this, I think it was season 1, I think episode 4, but it was Jesus reaching into the disciples, and it was the when they were bringing the fish into the boat. And so and then there was just a small sort of 15-20 minute gospel message about no longer having to strive, but Jesus has given it all. And so there was a response to that. And so there was a buzz. You should have seen the theatre. There was just people everywhere. And it was, I think, out of all the movies that day, this one and the cinema that we booked out was the most packed, and excitement.
Wow.
And even the movie theatre company, like Hoyts or whatever is equivalent in America, they actually promoted on their social media about our event and celebrated, and they took photos. And so in a Buddhist nation, to see a theatre completely booked out with the gospel message, worship, it was a really special time. So we really believe in that. The greatest days are still ahead of us. This is just the beginning. And our heart is that there'll be thriving, influential churches all across this nation of Thailand. And that's what's needed to change this nation and the trajectory it's on, to see Buddhist people understand who Jesus is and their identity in Christ, and to have that freedom of our Lord and Savior is really incredible to what we're pursuing to see the local church rise.
So what's your goal with my team and I coming out?
Yeah, to be honest, I feel like this has been a God connection, to be honest, Blake. I got this random email. I'm like, first thing was like, is this real? Because it's like, it sounds a bit too good to be true. And then I'm glad that you mentioned Pastor Josh, because I'm like, there's a human connection here.
Yeah. I was like, I gotta make sure he knows I'm real.
Yeah, I was like, there's some chat GDP sort of AI thing that's sort of come into my and all tongue in cheek, but I really feel like this has been a God connection, and I think God's been working on your hearts, and I've been praying for some connections about how to share the story as well. And so really we want to actually use this time as a testimony of what God has done.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be sharing in more details of lives that have been changed, transformed, and I guess the power and the obedience of when you say yes. And so, because often we say yes to things not knowing what's actually going to happen. And so, I guess my heart is that our story and what God's done through our lives in the past will be an inspiration to others that maybe feel the call to do something great in their city or their town, locally in America or wherever they're watching, but also some people called into nations or different cities. And so I think that's one aspect. The other aspect is actually to share the need and expose sort of how lost Thailand is, and the need of prayers and support and finances into this incredible nation. And so that's another aspect. And I guess part of it will be also sharing about what's next. You know, God's done great things, He's doing great things, but I guess sharing vision about what's about to come through the local churches. And so, yeah, I think just the personal stories, hearing people's hearts. We're going to try to line up a few interviews and connections with some villages that have been transformed, some lives that have been completely were one way and now in full-time ministry or whatever it might be, to share real personal stories with the followers.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I had like 4 or 5 different mission opportunities, and they all kind of popped up around the same time, end of summer last year. And I was like in the middle, I was like, I can't go anywhere right now. But I just kept praying, and I was like, don't feel called. Some of these places are really cool. I would love to go there, but I don't feel called to go to these places right now. And I kept praying and praying, and I was like, where on earth am I supposed to go? And I felt like I should just text Josh. I was like, hey man, does the church support anyone that needs some media work done? And he texted back almost immediately and said, the Kenways. I said,
wow,
I don't know who that is, but who are they? Where are they? And he sent me, I think he sent me that YouTube video you guys have, like the 2-minute long one. I watched it and I was like, okay, I'm going here. And
wow,
there was something about, I don't know, I just felt called to this, and then helping share your story. I saw that you had a YouTube video that had 8 views, and I was like, they're posting on here and this stuff needs to be seen, but it's not. And I know how to create videos. All you would have to do is post it. So I talked to my team and I was like, hey, I'm kind of praying and thinking about going to Thailand. Here's a video. And I sent them that video. And my board said, let's go. And then some of my video team, they were like, all right, when are we going? And
wow.
so I think the heart initially was just a documentary. Like, hey, let's shoot a documentary and kind of capture the story and the heart of the locals and the heart of you guys. But the more I thought about it, I was like, and the more you and I spoke, I was like, this is the perfect opportunity to create social media content for a YouTube channel, even your church. Even church's media is really good. And then a GoFundMe video, because it takes money to do anything. Like it's taking money for you to live in order to go share the gospel. It takes money for the church's lights to stay on, and to pay these local pastors that are going out and sharing the gospel all throughout Thailand right now. And I think the only way to fund a revival is to fund the revival, you know?
Yeah.
Like the cliche, it's God's will, it's God's bill, you know? So
Mm.
one of the things that my nonprofit wants to do is help unlock some of those revenue generating things. Like I could help you guys set up an Amazon Associates account so that you could anytime you purchase, or let's say like you want to go to a school and give out backpacks, what better way than for you to post, hey guys, we need 150 backpacks. Here's a link. Please purchase with this link because Amazon will pay us for it. So then anyone that donates donates a backpack can also, Amazon can pay you guys. Like there's all sorts of different little tricks like that you and I could work through and figure out ways to help you guys get a little more funding and hopefully see your team grow. And I wanted to talk really quick. Earlier, you talked about how your church went from 40 to 20 in a matter of a week. And I feel like part of that has to do with, like, I mean, obviously your obedience, but it was God saying, hey, if you don't prune this now, if you don't get rid of these branches that are, you know, taking the life from the rest of the plant, then the plant can't grow. And then you saw immediate growth. I think that's such a powerful testament to your obedience. And it's just like you said, yes, I'll go to Japan. Oh, yeah, I'll go back to Japan. Yeah. Thailand. Okay. When are we going? You know what I mean? I think I think part of it has to do with that progression of you just constantly saying yes to God and being like, okay, yeah, what's next? And so you weren't worried, you know, hey, I feel led to give people a way out, then let's give them the way out. And then you saw exponential growth. I think those little moments like that could be powerful for someone else, because there's no telling what nonprofit, what missionary, what pastor dealing with that same pull right now, you know? And something like that, hey, this is my story. Let me share it with you. I think it's the same thing relationally, and I think it works the same way with just telling stories and social media and documentaries. And, you know, I just want to excited to help you guys tell your story a little bit.
Yeah, we're so like really looking forward to, like, we stepped out in obedience. We're not fully funded yet, and so we've got a few savings that we're sort of trying to not use too much, but it's that sort of even the aspect of us. We stepped out, we booked our tickets, we're moving forward, and I guess breaking the rules a little bit, because a lot of missions organizations won't let you go until you're fully funded and things like that. And I know there's wisdom in that as well. But we have broken a few rules, and a sense that as we made those commitments and we stepped out and we booked tickets and things like this, well, I think, you and I had connected, and then I'm like, well, like, God's maybe creating an opportunity and, and diversifying, some funding. And to be honest, like, that's just personally, we're not like fully supported, but ministry wise, I mean, there is so much that is needed really to start to see some things starting to break through. And the truth is, finances empower the vision and the mission that God has called us to, and also his plan and purposes for this nation. And so, there's people that can contribute to that. And I truly believe that, it could just be a faithful group where we all just put in a little, but together, we can achieve much. We're not just after that rich business guy that drops, 100,000 into an account and, tries to empower you, but we can all contribute together. And I think, really believe that this is why we've connected as well, is that you guys have skills, gifts, wisdom in this space And with that, I truly believe that, we can see some great things happen where as people give and contribute, that lives will be transformed. So we honor you for even saying yes and being part of, all right, we're going to go to Thailand, let's do this, and it's going to be awesome. Can't wait to have you guys here.
We so far we've raised 6,000 out of the
Amazing.
about 6 that we need. So
Yep.
when we get another 3 or 4, we'll be able to go ahead and purchase the tickets. Which I'm so excited. We went ahead and picked dates, and it's not asked off for work and everything. We haven't even bought the tickets yet.
Yeah.
But I'm excited, and
Amazing.
I'm selling sponsorship opportunities for the documentary, because I was like, it's just like a golf fundraiser. People pay for banners, like boosting a hole or whatever. So why not sell an opportunity for a business to sew in and also get a little bit out of it? Like, it's a small advertisement for a business saying, hey, I support what these guys are doing. And so I have 2 businesses right now that are kind of going back and forth. Not back and forth, but they're kind of contemplating whether or not they want to be the title sponsor. But as soon as one of them decides and, writes the check or whatever, we'll be able to go ahead and buy our tickets, and we'll have a title sponsor for the documentary.
Amazing.
Have you heard of like the War Room movies and the Kendrick brothers and stuff? So they were born here, they live here in Albany, Georgia, and they produced their last movie here. But every year they do a Christian worldview film festival. And so my goal is to enter this documentary into it this time next year. Because I think the festival is either this week or last week. And enter that into the festival and get it in front of hundreds and hundreds of filmmakers, and producers and young people to see, what's going on in Thailand. So I'm super excited to enter it into that festival and maybe a few others to, it's not all about how many views it has on, the website, but having a couple hundred views in person here or there, I think that will have more of an impact than anything. I'm excited to shoot this and get the vision out.
So good. Can't wait to have you guys over, and we'll have to get talking about what we need to organize our side of things too. So we'll be good.
We're gonna hit the ground running. We have 10 days to shoot as much content as possible.
Great.
Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up. It was a pleasure to speak with you.
Likewise.
If there was one piece of advice you would give our audience, what would it be?
Be faithful with what God's given you now, or the talents, the gifts. Be faithful with that, and live in that moment with expectation that the future is going to be greater. I think one of my concerns is that particularly young people want to live beyond where they are right now, and there's this big frustration gap. And so I just think that be faithful with what God's given you now, and then the future and God's plan will unfold.
That's cool. I definitely would love to dig into that, but we need to go ahead and wrap this up. This conversation.
Sure, no problem.
All
right. Well, it's great to connect, and looking forward to connecting with the audience another time.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time.